In a world obsessed with rankings, two men dare to chisel greatness out of metaphorical granite, one wildly subjective opinion at a time. This show, every episode, we select four icons from a single topic and immortalize them in our own personal halls of fame. Subjective? Absolutely. Debatable? Always. Set in stone? Until next week, welcome to the Mount Rushmore Show, where your top four says everything about you. I'm Mike Mintz. He's Joe Mintz. Middle of summer, Joe, and the blockbuster season is not nearly what it used to be, but it is still there if you look hard enough. And there are some big films, at least one that's already come out.
It feels like summer blockbusters only apply to one man these days. Because the last time we had a summer blockbuster was involving this man we'll talk about today. And for our audience, so you're aware, don't give Mike a hard time because this was a last second, we'll call it emergency podcast that I asked him to come on for after I watched a movie. Many of you, hopefully, many of you saw. I won't spoil the story if you don't already know it. But I just got back from seeing The Odyssey, a little small indie done by on a low budget by a newbie director. You may have heard of him, Christopher Nolan. And anyway, I walked out of that theater thinking we have to do Christopher Nolan. But before I even get into the movie itself, there's one thing you can pretty much guarantee anytime you buy a ticket to a Christopher Nolan film: clear your schedule. This man doesn't make 90-minute movies. He really doesn't even make 2 hour movies. Most of his films are between 2.5 and 3 hours. And honestly, I think that's part of what makes them special. I'll start there. Be nice. But these aren't movies you casually throw in the background while you're folding laundry or scrolling your phone. They're events. They're meant to be experienced in a theater, ideally IMAX if you're lucky enough to have one, on the biggest screen possible with the loudest sound system you can find. Mike, have you seen this movie yet?
I have not seen this movie, but I got to tell you, Joe, I don't read the reviews, but I've read like I look at the ratings of them, and by all metrics, this looks like to be a magnum opus. This is a great work, a masterpiece. Everything's 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5, almost across the board, which you never see. You see usually a couple of those sprinkled in with some lower scores or at least some middling scores. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying based on the reviews of this thing. It seems like a monolithic force for a guy who's had ones in the past. So I don't know if it's super surprising, but it's also like Nolan was kind of on this weird trend of hits and misses, and this one seems like he knocked it out of the park, at least from a critical standpoint.
Mike, I couldn't disagree about hits and misses. The guy's never missed. Tell me one thing that didn't make almost $1 billion and be critically acclaimed. I mean, some are better than others. They can't all be one up each other, but they're all successful, both critically and commercially.
Well, I guess that's fair. And I guess I was looking at it more from a personal standpoint. There's movies that are on his IMDb that have ratings that I don't think that they deserve personally. I'm not a Nolan stan, don't get me wrong. But you're right. Everything he does is essentially Hollywood gold. He's the current James Cameron, even though Cameron's still around kind of thing. But he's on that trajectory, which is wild. But for him to come out with one right now and have it being these kind of numbers is still kind of par for the course, but kind of amazing. So,
Is there an IMAX within 100 miles of Miles City?
yeah, well, in miles, 138 miles. Is that close
Okay.
enough? So, but in Billings, I'm luckily just down the street from an IMAX, so I
It
got
may
one.
be worth the road trip, Mike. I'll just speak for myself, but I'll warn you. I mentioned this earlier, the length. I have the bladder capacity of about a 6-year-old. So whenever Nolan announces a 3 hour movie, I'm already game planning my hydration strategy before I even leave the house. I'm actually proud to report that during the Odyssey, I only had two pee breaks, which to several sounds like a lot, but to me was conservative. That's a personal best. But I did make a critical mistake that I realized in the theater. And I'd like to offer a public service announcement to anyone going to see a long movie. If you're going to drink a Pepsi or a Coke, whatever your fountain drink of choice is, eat popcorn. That's what the popcorn is for. The salt is a conduit that helps your body hang on to that water. It buys you time. My mistake was grabbing that Pepsi with nothing to eat. And not that I didn't want popcorn. The line was long, it was getting close, and halfway through the movie, I was hungry. I wished I had it. I wish I waited. But when I see a line like that, I say, "Now I'll survive." You know, 2 minutes versus 10, big difference in a movie break. But I survived. My bladder barely did, and I ended up making a couple, I would say, Olympic caliber sprints to the bathroom. Which brings me to really my real only criticism of Christopher Nolan. Give us an intermission, just one, maybe two. Treat it like an NBA game. Give us a couple quarter breaks. Let everybody stretch their legs, refill the popcorn, grab another drink, maybe even a meal if you're feeling ambitious, and then we can get back to the movie.
That's interesting, Joe. I kind of want to dig into the history of the intermission because I know I've been told that films used to do them, that it used to be a regular occurrence, and it's not anymore. And I feel like movies are getting by and large longer in almost every capacity. Ever since The Lord of the Rings, it feels like 3 hour movies are the norm almost anymore. And I'm kind of with you. Why can't we do an intermission at the right before the third act or something? So,
Another interesting idea would be, this isn't rocket science, but you go to the bathroom and you have an app on your phone, call it the AMC whatever theater app, where you log in with your movie ticket, scan it, whatever, and you can put on your headphones or AirPods, walk to the bathroom. You can just follow the story. It's not going to be as epic in the bathroom.
or
I mean,
more.
you're a little distracted, but at least you don't miss anything because the hard part is timing when to take a pee break.
Mhm.
And you kind of read the room. You're never the only one in a full theater. So when I see a couple people getting up, I usually follow.
Joe, you just have to go back. I was thinking you were going to say an app where you could pause it, like one pause per person, but that'd be a bad disease. That'd
I
be a
mean, for a
bad.
paused theater, how would that work?
If you pause every
Democracy?
go, yeah.
Nightmare. I'm gonna flush that one, Mike. Pun
Nope.
intended.
Yeah, there you go. Well,
But
I
now
was
let's talk about the Odyssey. But unless you had more to say on the bladder piece here, Mike.
just one thing, and this is about length. When I got into like looking into screenwriting and stuff, one of the big things that came up, the biggest question of screenwriting is how long is a feature film? Like how long is a script for a feature film? This question came up all the time. And the only answer I ever saw was always the same, which is your script should take as long as it takes to write your story. And so that's why you see movies that are I think that's why you see. I mean, a lot of them are those 88-minute movie kind of thing. That's the 90s and 80s kind of template. And now you're seeing longer movies. I think that something like the Odyssey, a 10-year journey, maybe it does deserve a 3 hour. It's an epic, right? So,
Well, look at The Hobbit. Look at Dune. Make a couple movies out of it. I don't mind seeing Dead Reckoning Part 2, The Odyssey
right.
Part 2, Give us another event to go see. Make some more money. I mean, do it. I wouldn't hate it. I don't think anybody else would. But I'll just talk about moving past the logistics of it. I loved it. I don't want to spoil anything because people haven't seen it. And if you didn't go to school, I guess then it would be a spoiler. But this movie somehow managed to live up to expectations that really felt impossible. I honestly can't think of another movie in my lifetime that has been this anticipated. Every casting announcement became news, every trailer became an event, every behind the scenes story built the hype even higher. And somehow, with all of that, which usually puts you doomed to fail, it delivered. The scale is unreal. Performance is unbelievable. Visuals are breathtaking. The score, I can't even describe the you're captured by the score. It is a guarantee for best score at the Oscars. And the action feels intimate despite being really massive too. And the casting was phenomenal. It was loaded. Somebody usually feels out of place. It never felt that once. Everybody fit exactly where they belonged. I really only have one nitpick, and it's honestly more of a me problem than a problem with the movie, and it's the accents in Greek mythology. Whenever the movie dives into that, or ancient civilizations, everybody has these dramatic accents, and every now and then I find myself concentrating more on deciphering exactly what they're saying than actually absorbing what they're saying. And again, that's entirely on me. And to be fair, if everybody talked like they grew up in Brooklyn, I'd probably hate that even more. So I completely understand why Nolan made the choice. It's just the one tiny thing that occasionally pulled me out. Outside of that, spectacular. And what amazed me most was he's coming off of Oppenheimer, a movie that won Best Director and Best Picture at the Oscars 2 years ago, his last movie. It's one of the biggest critical and commercial successes of his entire career. And most directors reach that summit and they take a breath. They maybe make something smaller, more personal, passion project, less pressure. But instead, Nolan says, let's adapt the Odyssey, a movie somehow even bigger, even more ambitious, more pressure. And somehow, with all of that, he pulled it off. And I was thinking about other people in their careers that have done that. Say another director that followed one masterpiece with something grander. And the only person I could think of was Francis Ford Coppola when he went from the Godfather films to Apocalypse Now. And that's about it. Usually careers have peaks, then they level off. And he somehow climbed another mountain that already reaching the top, which makes me wonder, where do you go from here? Whatever he announces next is going to become one of the most anticipated movies ever made. I can't, the expectations are going to be almost impossible. I think after seeing this movie, he's officially crowned himself the defining director of the 21st century. So I was going to go back, kind of give you how we got here with him. For those of you that don't know or haven't seen, his first start was Memento, a relatively small independent movie that's kind of had a cult-like following now, would you say?
Oh, dude, for sure. It's had a cult-like following since it came out, though. So,
Yeah.
but not like an overwhelming mainstream success, for sure.
Certainly not box office.
No,
That
no.
wasn't the intent at the time, at least. It's a non-linear story that immediately announced there was a filmmaker who thought differently than everybody else. Then came Insomnia, proving that he could work kind of within the studio system, a little bit more budget. Then Warner Brothers handed him Batman. And not just Batman, a Batman franchise that basically died after the infamous Batman and Robin. Uh, Most directors would have played it safe, but he instead reinvented superhero movies. Then came The Prestige, which was the first movie of his I actually saw. I was pretty young, and it rethought how I even thought about movies. It was so complicated, twist, grand. Have you seen The Prestige, Mike?
Of course. Yeah, I love it. Magic, man.
Yeah, it's a forgotten one on his resume, but incredible. It was my introduction to him. I didn't know who this guy was. It wasn't a Steven Spielberg movie, seeing War of the Worlds, but it just blew my mind with how it was done. Then came The Dark Knight, then Inception, a massive blockbuster based entirely on an original idea, not a comic book sequel, no existing IP like everyone seems to gravitate to today. Just an incredibly complicated concept executed so well that it became one of the defining movies of its generation. And then he follows up with The Dark Knight Rises, Interstellar, Dunkirk, Tenet. And to be fair to Tenet, it kind of gets forgotten in his resume because it came out during COVID, but still did fairly well and still was well received. You have to respect that he refused to compromise on his vision no matter what. And then came Oppenheimer, a 3 hour historical drama that proved audiences will show up for an adult filmmaking if it's done at the highest level. And now The Odyssey. When you lay out his career, you realize something. His movies didn't just get bigger, they just became more confident, more ambitious, more cinematic. Hollywood has spent decades chasing these franchises between sequels, reboots, shared universes. Meanwhile, Nolan became one of the very few directors whose name became the franchise. People don't say, I'm going to see the new historical drama. They say, I'm going to see the new Christopher Nolan movie. Very few directors in history have earned that. I think about a Tarantino maybe, right? which brings us to the Mount Rushmore. Here's the interesting thing about Nolan. He doesn't have a huge, gigantic filmography. It's very selective. He's not Spielberg making multiple classics every few years over 5 decades. He takes his time. He's obsessed over every detail. And because of that, almost every movie feels like an event. So we may share some here, Mike. I expect we do. Anything else to say about the man, the myth, the legend at this point before we go into our top four?
I mean, I think you did a pretty good job to kind of just piggyback just for a second is the idea that Nolan is kind of, he's kind of in a league of his own right now. He's the real auteur and might be the only one of this century. I mean, Cameron's still around, but Cameron's so obsessed with his Avatar movies that he hasn't broken out of that. Spielberg is trying to reinvent himself, but man, Disclosure Day was a big swing and a miss. And so what you have left is you have Nolan, who really has kind of been, like you said, kind of knocking him out of the park every time at bat. The Odyssey was considered widely considered unfilmable, and maybe that's why he took it on. Is when you have a movie that's or you have a story that somebody goes, you can't make a movie out of that, and you're the best director in the world at the moment. Maybe you say, challenge accepted, and apparently he did all right. So I'm excited, Joe. I love Nolan. Like I said, I'm not a Nolan stan. There are movies that Tenet, I do not. Tenet had nothing to do with COVID, in my opinion. That's just it's a bad movie. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't flow. I think he had some great ideas that just were completely disconnected. He didn't take studio notes clearly, and he wanted to stick with this story. I've watched it about 7 times. I have no idea what's going on in Tenet. Nobody else does that's ever seen it unless you're taking notes. And even I took notes. I still don't know what's going on in that movie. So other than that, and there's
I
a
don't think
couple
Robert
others.
Pattinson knew what was going on in that movie.
Nobody did that. It's just see, and Dunkirk is another one. You know what? Let's get into our show. So.
Mike, before you start, can you give the guy some praise here? You immediately start with, I'm not a Nolan guy, and here's everything I don't like about the man.
Well, I do love. Here's the thing: is like I just want to be clear because what we're about to get into, Joe, is going to be nothing but praise because I'm picking my top four. And honestly, this is a tough one because I fight with people on the internet from time to time. But I'm a
Oh,
huge
you're one of
fan of.
those, Mike?
Yeah, oh yeah, dude. Yeah, I'm like an energy
Keyboard warrior,
vampire.
Mike
Oh yeah,
Mintz.
watch out for this guy, right? I'm a tough dude
He
behind the
lives in
keyboard.
Miles City, folks.
I t- that's yes, I
He's
do.
not
That's
hard to
good.
find if you go in there. There's a
So small
population of
towns.
100.
But anyways, I'm saying like there's a lot of people that almost hate on Nolan. I think anytime you're super successful, that happens. Anytime you're very, very good, you're going to have people. It's like the Patriots. People are going to hate you because you're good. And I think Nolan is great. And because of that, there is that backlash from people that view themselves as somehow gatekeepers. I'm not that way. There's a lot of Nolan films that I absolutely love. I just want to be clear in the fact that I don't think he's some sort of messiah or filmmaking god. The man is certainly fallible. That being said, I don't think anybody's got a filmography, Tarantino included, like Nolan does right now.
And as far as personality goes, he's pretty reserved. I mean, he's a married man with kids. He seems pretty balanced and centered. He's not doesn't come off egotistical in interviews. He just focuses on the work. Whereas I take a Tarantino, I think he's the closest comparison as far as how prolific he is and how his name can sell a movie. Tarantino is very into Tarantino. When you hear him talk about, and he believes his opinion is the last opinion, right? He's not afraid to share it. And his personal life is all over the place over his career. He's one of those, and that's what you expect from great artists is they're off kiltered a little bit, right? It's what makes the great art. Whereas Nolan doesn't seem to be that, which make is interesting.
Nolan very much seems workmanlike. He just seems
Yes.
like that Yeoman farmer that goes out there and puts his head down and plows. And he makes just amazing things from almost every get. And it's pretty incredible. You're right. He is a very, I don't know if I've ever seen him do much of an interview. I'm sure he's done plenty of them, but they don't end up in my feed for any stretch. And probably because they're not all of that fascinating or he's not selling himself in any sort of way. He's just telling stories, I imagine. But yeah, you're right. He's very much different than some of those other guys.
Yeah. Well, some of the other ones they're, on like Spielberg is on panels to talk about the future of movie making along with Scorsese, and Tarantino would jump on any podcast he can to tell him what he thinks his favorite movies are, right?
And
Never
badmouth
about his
people he
work anymore.
shouldn't. Yeah. Yeah, and Tarantino, and I saw Nolan actually. Tarantino's been notorious for saying he's only going to do his 10 films, right? It's all about that filmography, is that like he says that kind of stuff. And it's like Tarantino's got great movies, don't get me wrong, but Nolan criticized him over that. Why limit yourself? And I'm 100% with Nolan too. Why, I would love to see more Tarantino movies, not less.
Yeah, and I could talk. There's a whole podcast to come about Tarantino one day, folks, for that 10th movie. It will be grand, but it's not for today. This is about the Mr. Nolan.
All right, well, should we kick it off then, Joe?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Well, I figure we're going to share this one, so we'll get it out of the way. This is The Dark Knight. One of my all-time favorite movies, period. Regardless of Nolan or anybody. This is not the movie that put him on the map for me, but this is the one that solidified, like, oh crap, this guy is for real. Like, for real, for real. Like, this is just as big as any movie any other director's ever done. And for a long time, I thought it was going to be unbeatable by him. It's his magnum opus. It's his final work. The Dark Knight's fantastic. From Heath Ledger's performance as the Joker, Christian Bale as Batman, just the darker tone. The sequel, which is usually a bad idea, this one actually eclipses what Batman Begins did, and it really put movie making and superhero films in a whole new league. You don't get movies like I don't think you get the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, without the success of The Dark Knight and everything that it set out to do. It's a near perfect film. It's a crime noir. It's a comic book movie. It's well acted. It's well paced. It's great. And you know what? It's one of those. I'll put it on a perennial list of all time favorites. It's in my top five. Period. That's what I'll say about The Dark Knight.
We are aligned here. It is top five movie for me as well. It is my favorite Nolan movie. And I did not have high expectations for this going in. I remember getting invited to see it with a friend of the theater, and I had already seen Batman Begins. And full confession, I don't like Batman Begins. It's not my favorite
Slow.
movie. It's slow. And I remember going with very low expectations. And then I remember walking out of the theater realizing superhero movies have changed forever. And we've talked about Heath Ledger in this previous Oscars episode, which I believe is the greatest performance of all time, which is what stole the movie for me. But beyond that, Nolan elevated the entire genre. This wasn't just Batman fighting bad guys like the previous iterations. It became a crime thriller. It was Batman and Heat and The Departed and The Town combined in a way. It was a philosophical debate, chaos versus order. It's the only movie I've ever rewatched in theaters twice. It was one of those I left and said, "Can I go see this again?" And I did. Every time I rewatch it, I appreciate it even more. It could be one of those I watch at least in part once every year or two.
It's interesting too because as we go down this list, we're going to notice something about Nolan, and which is his relationship with time and how he uses time in his movies. The Dark Knight is probably his most linear story. I don't know if there's any jumping back and forth. Batman Begins jumps back and forth between him and his childhood and his training and all of that stuff. The Dark Knight might be Nolan's most linear film. Everything just kind of takes place in order, and that's kind of interesting. But it's also my favorite. So
Yeah, well, it's also taking on a trilogy as part of
true,
it too. You
true.
kind of are stuck within the confines of that.
All right, Joe, do you want to go with number two then?
So I'll just rip the Band-Aid real quick. I won't be long on this. And the Odyssey. I mean, I know it
Wow,
won't be on
really?
yours because you haven't seen it yet. Most times you say, "Oh, you got to let it simmer," but I'm sorry, it's there. I know it's the newest one. I know recency bias is real. I don't care. This is the culmination of everything Nolan has learned over the last 25 years. It's epic, emotional, visually stunning, technically flawless, and seeing it in theaters elevated it even more. This isn't a movie you watch on your laptop. It's an experience.
I think that is the best praise anybody could give for a movie. For you, Joe. I think there's other people that would be like, they've seen it, they go, "It's my new favorite movie." But you're not that kind of guy. I've known you for a while, Joe, and you're very much aware of recency bias. So for you to put the Odyssey on right now, I think speaks volumes to the grand scale that this movie ends up being. And you're not alone. in your viewpoints that this is one of these all-time greats. Like I said, the reviews and the critical score is unbelievable for this movie. And now I'm like, I almost want to go see it right now, go watch the matinee, you know? So
You should. Don't, and I didn't see an IMAX, to be fair. I saw it in a Dolby, which is a little bit elevated versus the regular 70 millimeter, I guess, as you're told in there. They kind of sell you on the Dolby thing in the
I'm
previews.
sure. Wasn't he a
Um,
sound guy? Come on.
I don't know. Just a big screen to me. But yes, you should. And honestly, we're only doing a Nolan Mount Rushmore once. So I don't want to look back 5, 10 years from now and be like, I didn't put her on there because I was smitten about recency bias. I'm like, it deserves it. I know it will later. It will age.
Well, I think that's fantastic. I obviously have nothing much to say about the Odyssey other than my excitement for it. One of my friends asked, "Did you read the book?" It's like, come on, dude. Homer wrote. I read the Iliad too, and those are hard to read. I'd much rather see a film version of it. So yes, I've read the book. There are scenes from the book I'm excited to see in the movie, but that's not really what I'm going for. So
Yeah, in school, you probably all remember reading at least the contemporary version of the story, which is what I read. It wasn't the original text, but you know the story. You had to write a paper, take a test on it from some contemporary translation.
yeah. All right, Joe. I'll pick my since you picked one that I'm not sharing, I'm going to go with my wild card here, and I'm going with Memento as my number two. So,
Whoa.
and I love Memento, and I know that that's kind of a big swing, and for the cult fans of it, but this is not a mainstream movie. And what's weird about it is made in 2000. It's got Guy Pearce as the lead actor, and he's had some other big roles, but look at everybody else. I mean, it's the year 2000. You got Carrie Ann Moss. You got Joey Pants, Joe Pantoliano. You got a pretty good cast in a movie that feels like an indie film all the way around. And if you haven't seen Memento, um, look, it's Nolan. The time is weird, right? Things are going forwards, things are going backwards. And actually, a lot of what Tenet, I think, was trying to recapture was some of the magic of Memento. It doesn't work in Tenet. It absolutely works in Memento. If you're talking about non-linear storytelling, I mean things like Pulp Fiction or any of those types of movies that don't go in some sort of natural order, most of them are a gimmick that's hard to get past. I think Memento does it the best because it when it ends, you walk away going, "Oh my God, I need to watch it again." Not necessarily because it was great, because it is, but also because now you know the twist and you want to see it again, I guess the right way. Memento is one of those movies that sticks with you. I still remember it. I watched it when it came out. Somebody had brought it. I didn't watch it in the theaters. Somebody had the VHS to show my age here, the VHS tape of it, and they were like, "Dude, you got to see this." And I remember in the first 10 minutes, I was like, "This movie's not for me," and they just kept growing on me and growing on me. I love Memento, and that's what first I saw Christopher Nolan as. I didn't know the name then. It wasn't until later I was like, "Oh, that's the same guy that made Memento." Love it. Great film.
Confession, Mike, I've never seen Memento. So
It's
I think you got to go see the Odyssey and I got to see Memento.
I think that's a fair trade. I think I'm gonna win in this one because Memento's good, but I don't think it's Odyssey level. So
But it's not 3 hours. That's my favorite part.
it's certainly not. Although if you have to watch it twice, it might be. So
Yeah, to be fair, I should have mentioned there's three movies of his I have not seen. It's Memento, Insomnia, and Tenet. So those will not be on the list, and I won't have much to say on those. But you've already gave me a review on Tenet, and that's part of what scared me off too with some of the reviews.
there's no reason to watch Tenet, and I'm a Nolan fan, but it's just not his best work. So
Okay, well, we're not going to share Memento. Um, my next one is another one I've seen in theaters, and it is Dunkirk. Dunkirk was a close one for my military movies, Mount Rushmore. Um, but I kind of look at it as different than that. It's almost he's in a category of his own. I love this movie, and again, seeing it in theaters made all the difference. The sound, the music, the ticking clock sticks out to me when I think about it. The aerial combat, the tension. He trusted visuals over dialogue, and it worked beautifully. In fact, Tom Hardy, a big star now and then, who's had, I believe, zero dialogue the entire movie, and they put a airplane mask or whatever they're called. I'm using bad
air,
terminology. As he was a
airplane
fighter
mask.
pilot, I don't know, whatever that's called. So hiding this movie star's face, like they did in Bane too, and gave him no dialogue, uh, and it worked. It's one of the most immersive war movies I've ever seen.
I will say the good first. Dunkirk tells an incredible story that needs to be told, and the idea of civilians literally rescuing their soldiers from a beach while they're being surrounded by the Germans. Honestly, guys, here's the deal. As a history teacher, right, I can tell you that if Dunkirk went the other way, that's the end of World War II, and we're all speaking German now. Because you have to think 180,000, something like that, expeditionary force soldiers stuck on the beach of Dunkirk, surrounded by the Germans. And the military, you can't send the big ships because they're easy targets. So what happens? Civilians come and on their own accord take it upon themselves to rescue these men. And it really, really is an important story. And Nolan, of course, is a master at being able to capture a lot of that tension and a lot of that stuff in there. The bad, I guess, is kind of some of the stuff that you love, Joe. I didn't like the sparse dialogue, and I felt that the music was so sparse that it created a sort of uncomfortable tension for me watching the movie. I like it, and I think that the idea of the intertwining of the three stories together and kind of the timeline is really unique and interesting. It's just not on my top four.
Yeah, I get it. That was a tough call. There's some other ones that might be left off that were right there. But and that's the thing about these Rushmores for Nolan. I've had some conversation with people about their favorite four movies, and they're surprisingly all different. For a guy
Well,
that has only done what, eight movies?
yeah, I don't think you're ever going to be alone if you're going to pick four Nolan films. Somebody else is going to share those with you. And like
Yeah.
you said, it's not like he's not like he's striking out ever. Even the ones that we don't love, that I don't personally love, are major hits.
And what's interesting is actually Dunkirk is the most polarizing on the list. People that either have that as their favorite or not in the top four at all. It's really a hit or miss movie for a lot of people that I've talked to about it.
Yeah, and I'll tell you from a history teacher's perspective, that's the same way. Some of the people that show it in like they'll show it in their class every year because they think it's one of the greatest war movies ever made,
I
and
think
then
that's
there's others.
why is you're thinking about, yeah, the historical context isn't necessarily as accurate, but it's more about the story. I almost forget that it actually happened. It's more of an epic. Same with Oppenheimer. Like when I'm watching these movies, I'm not thinking about the accuracy. I'm just thinking about the tension and what these characters and the drama, what they're going through.
Well, and to be clear, Nolan is always very good, I feel, with his accuracy. Both Dunkirk and Oppenheimer really do capture essentially the gist of what really happened. So,
Yeah.
all right. So I guess we're what's that? Your
That
third,
was
right?
my third.
All
So
right.
you're number three.
I'm on to my number three.
I
This
skipped ahead of you
is
somehow when we shared.
we're back and forth. I'm going with the Prestige. All right. So, yep, you got to have the setup, the turn, right? And then the Prestige. It's a movie about magic. And it's magical in its execution. It's got some interesting twists and turns. It's a fascinating cast. Hugh Jackman, Christian Bale, doing fantastic things. Oh man, Michael Caine, which is a regular Nolan contributor. I think this is Kane's best. Well, it's hard because Alfred's so good, but he's so great in The Prestige, a movie that really takes the idea of magic and takes a look inside of the performance of everything. And what I love about it is the rewatchability. It's like Memento. It's a lot of these movies by Nolan are kind of messing with time a little bit and also out of order, or you're just not sure of things the first time through. And they just create this rewatchability where you're like, oh, I want to see how he set all that up. And the dude's a master at the little things. He's able to put things into places that that rewards a rewatch. When you go back, you're like, oh, I see it. I see how that happened. I see a little bit behind the trick of what he's doing. And I guess in a way, this movie is not just about magic, it's also its own trick in its own way.
I love the pick. I love the movie. It doesn't make mine, but it very well could. And if another time of the day, it just depends on when you ask me, right? They're all so close. And I and it changed how I thought of movies. And I was very young when I saw it. I had never seen a movie like that. Most movies I would call up to that age were unsophisticated, right? Is comedy, action. This was a deep one that made you think about things and you had to focus on. And I feel like Prestige had just the right amount of that, where you rewatch it and you maybe catch some things. And I think Inception, he took it to too much a level for me. It was kind of some of the elements of the Prestige. He wanted to throw into this different universe. And for me, it didn't work. I know for some people, they love it. It's more of a generation movie for some folks. For me, if it's a movie you have to watch twice, because that became the requirement. I remember people coming out of the theater, it's great, but you got to see it twice. I go, well, then I'm out. I'll watch it once, and if I don't love it once, I'm not rewatching it. You don't get me to watch it twice. Whereas Prestige, you can watch once, and if you watch it again, you just pick up on things, but it doesn't take away from you understanding what you saw the first time.
No, and I think you're absolutely right, Joe. And I think that's what separates Nolan from some other gimmick filmmakers where they're like, oh, I'm going to make a movie that won't make sense the first time. The thing about Nolan is I think they're great the first time. They're just even better on a second watch, or they fill
Correct.
in the blanks. The last thing I'll say about The Prestige is if we ever do a Mount Rushmore of stunt casting, it's got one of the best. David Bowie as Tesla, come on, man. And he nails it. What's funny is you don't even, it's not like Bowie in not the Dark Crystal, but the Labyrinth. It's not like that, where it's like a clearly he's a musician. It's like you don't even know it's Bowie. He's really playing the character. And that's rare air. Only a guy like Nolan and a guy like Bowie could pull something like that off.
Yeah, he has become almost as famous for his ensemble casting choices too. You'll see it in the Odyssey when you're watching it. You're like, it's a lot of that guys. Like, oh man, John Bernthal is in there for 5 minutes, and he's great, right? I mean, we know Matt Damon is the lead here, but you have a lot of people. Even I'll just say John Leguizamo, I believe his name is.
Oh,
Guy's
wow.
been around forever. I think he'll get an Academy Award nomination. He's in the beginning of the movie. And you think, oh, that's cool. They cast him for a couple minutes. And then you realize he's a major part of this movie as you watch it. And he's really good in it. But he does things like that out of nowhere.
Dude, I also love the idea of Matt Damon having to go home. Did you know, Joe? Here's a stat for you. Hollywood has now spent $603 million trying to bring Matt Damon home. So, Saving Private Ryan, Interstellar, come on, Martian. So,
Yes, it felt like Interstellar and The Martian were almost tied together, even though one was Ridley Scott and one was Nolan.
because of Matt
Um,
Damon's character. Yeah.
yeah, he just seems tired. In fact, I saw some clips from behind the scenes filming of the movie, and Pattinson and Holland, keep in mind their characters are at Ithaca enjoying feasts while they wait for Odysseus to come home. And uh, Odysseus is tired and he's on these massive journeys through epic, fights with Cyclops and Circes and you name it. And you could tell it Matt Damon on the interviews. Like he just seems exhausted, whereas Pattinson's more bubbly in the interviews behind the scenes.
Well, I think Damon got a taste for the little touch with Interstellar and then a little more of a role in Oppenheimer. And he's like, oh, I
Yeah.
want to work with Nolan. I think the problem with Nolan is sometimes you can bite off more than you can chew. I'm not saying Damon did. I'm just saying like he probably legitimately is tired from the way I know that they talked about the actual locations. Here's the deal is when you put money into a movie like The Odyssey, which I think was 250, $300 million budget, which is a lot, but not like massive amount billion-dollar budgets like a James Cameron film. But he is not going to film it on green screen, right? This dude is going to take you to locations that are going to be amazing. And you got to assume that the amount of effort and money and just everything put into the practical effects and everything, the so-called in-camera stuff, doesn't always turn out sometimes. Sometimes the green screen works better. But Nolan seems to have a knack for being able to do it legit and real and making it feel really powerful at the same time. And that's probably exhausting.
Yeah, and sorry to keep coming back to the Odyssey, folks. It's just fresh. It's what started all of this conversation, but and it is his magnum opus after following his magnum opus
Which
with
followed his
Oppenheimer.
previous magnum opus, right? All right, Joe, I
Right.
think we're down to our last one here. So,
Yeah. This was so hard. I mean, you've been naming stuff I wanted to put on here, but there's really two that were the biggest dangle. And I'll say it, but I'll defend the other one. I'm going to pull a Jamarcus Russell here. That's a nod to an early episode for those inside baseball OG listeners here. But I'm going with Interstellar. And it was between that and The Dark Knight Rises. And I could make a case for either one depending on the day. Um, I ultimately land on Interstellar because when I rewatch it, it climbs higher in my rankings. The emotion between Cooper and Murph, the Hans Zimmer score, which could have been my favorite soundtrack if I think of it they've ever used. The visuals, ambition, all the things we love in Nolan. I love McConaughey in it so much too. He's coming right off winning his Oscar. It feels like that's his apex. And I've never been a sci-fi space guy, but the way it blends science and space exploration and with philosophy and the family story into one is what got me in. And it gets better every time you watch it, like most Nolan films. And I have to acknowledge why it was such a difficult call. You're like, okay, because most people might say you're talking about a movie, a third movie in an installment versus a one of one legendary movie.
And I think most people would argue that The Dark Knight Rises was a bit of a letdown. So I'm interested into hearing your viewpoints here, Joe. So
I loved it. I mean, this one's it's for me, right? But and I saw Dark Knight Rise in theaters, and it is one of my favorite movie going experiences when you go see his. I did not see Interstellar in theaters. So that's part of it too. So upon first watch, you see Dark Knight Rise in theaters, and then you see Interstellar the first time. The theater movie is going to win in a Nolan world. But what I'm putting Interstellar on there for is when you rewatch it, that and not that The Dark Knight Rise isn't still good on a rewatch, but it's not better on a rewatch than it was in theaters. Um, and opening weekend, it was awesome to see The Dark Knight Rises. Packed house, anticipation after The Dark Knight, which, like I said, is one of my top five movies ever. It did feel like that true event. And Bane is so unforgettable. I think about the stadium sequence is iconic, and it gave Bruce Wayne a very fitting conclusion. I wish they made more. Is how I left. I wanted the Robin with Joseph Gordon-Levitt on another installment.
I actually really like The Dark Knight Rises. I know it gets a lot of hate because I think people were expecting a sequel to the one of his greatest movies, The Dark Knight. How could it ever live up to expectations? I don't think there was any way it could have. I think it did everything it could and should have done. And Bane is an interesting one, Joe, because the character portrayed by Tom Hardy has gotten a lot of flack, even when it first came out and over the years, people questioning the artistic choices, the accent. I have to tell you, it's a big swing, and I appreciate it, even just the fact that they took a big swing.
It's one of those I don't care kind of movies, what you think about it, because I love it. And it's not, it made a ton of money and it was more or less successful critically. It was just hard to follow The Dark Knight. It's the classic trope of when you reach this high of a mountain, you're doomed to fall. It's unlike the trajectory he's on right now with the Odyssey. I just love this movie. I don't think it's better than The Dark Knight, but I think it's one of the most rewatchable movies on his resume. But and Interstellar is just a little bit better. It's close, but you're meant to experience these movies in theaters. I'm sorry, and the fact that I didn't see Interstellar in the theater is a big regret. I wish they had a comeback time where they'll, bring this certain movie back to IMAX, whatever. I'm in because they're built for IMAX specifically, and I've never seen them in IMAX. I would love to. It'd be so cool if IMAX brought Interstellar back, and I could redo what should have been done originally, but in an IMAX. They're built for enormous sound systems. They're built to completely immerse you for 3 hours. And if I had gone off my original theater experiences, The Dark Knight Rises would have probably got it. Would have been that recency bias, right? But I'm not gonna let that happen here. When
Well,
you judge movies themselves, Interstellar gets the slight edge.
Well, Joe, we're gonna share the final pick, which is Interstellar, and it's a fantastic film, and it's one of those movies I was actually trepidatious about. Yeah, I was a bit just unsure about it. I knew coming off Inception and everything else that he had done, it Nolan felt like a lot of work sometimes at the movie theater. Like you got to really think about things, and there's gonna be twists and turns. And it just felt like this heavy thing that I wasn't really interested in. And then I saw it. I was like, oh my God, it's so good. The other thing about Interstellar is it stood the test of time. I talk to a lot of teenagers these days, not by choice. It's a work habit. But anyways, this movie keeps coming
No more
back up.
detail there, Mike. Let's leave it like
Yeah, let's just leave it there. The movie keeps coming up, Interstellar. Every time I ask him like top three movies, I hear this one on a regular basis. It's like Cars and Interstellar are the ones from the past that stick with this generation. Like, and it's
nostalgia
wild.
bait.
And one of the questions that I found really interesting is I had asked this question to a class, a whole class, well, it was like a lot of classes, which was essentially if there was any one movie that you could forget you've seen and watch for the first time over again, which would it be? And the overwhelming answer was Interstellar. It's just, it's almost like The Matrix in its philosophy to some degree. The viewpoints of time, the viewpoints of what humanity is, what we're doing here, the connections to the past, the whole idea of the blight being essentially the new Dust Bowl from the 1930s. So it's got a lot of that stuff that's jam packed into it. And even if you took all of that stuff out and just watched it as a story, it's amazing. And I think that's one of the genius things about Nolan. And I put Interstellar is my favorite Nolan film right at The Dark Knight. They're really kind of battling that out. Um, and the reason is because it's so dense, yet it's so enjoyable. And to do both of those things is got to be like walking a tight wire of a razor blade. I mean, I can't even imagine what it would be like to put together something that is on that scale and do it in such an entertaining way. Fantastic
Yeah.
movie.
Okay. So we share what, two?
Yeah, Prestige or The Dark Knight and Interstellar. Yep.
Yeah.
So.
Well, to close, I talked a little bit about this in the intro, but what do you think, Mike? Where does Christopher Nolan go from here?
Well, I think he's going to be playing with house money. If he wasn't already,
Oh,
he
blank check, no
definitely,
doubt.
yeah,
He had it
that's,
with the Odyssey.
yeah. And I think that, it's interesting you say that because I wonder, does he take more big swings? And coming off Oppenheimer, you're right. Most people wouldn't, most directors would say, all right, time to play it a little safer or do something smaller to go for a movie that was considered a story that was considered unfilmable. And then to nail it, you almost wonder, is this going to be a Cameron trajectory where he's going to try to one up himself from here on out? Here's my 2 cents. I hope he does. I don't know what he's going to do, but I hope he takes on the next biggest IP or belief or even his own original ambitious project. I don't care what it is, but I want it to be big and I want it to be a huge swing for the fences. I don't want him to play it safe. That's my personal take on it.
After the backlash from the Avengers Doomsday trailer, maybe he takes over the Marvel universe after encompassing DC. They just say, Nolan, put on your cape and fix this for us.
I just don't think Nolan is a fan of taking popular stuff and trying to repopularize it. I think the thing about Batman, you're right. Batman and Robin was such a failure, almost ruined the franchise. Reviving it was a task, was a challenge. I don't think the MCU really fits that bill. I think that if I had to guess crystal ball time, right? I'm going to say he's going to go with an original story next.
Honestly, I have no idea. And maybe that's the most exciting part because every time we think we've seen his best work, he somehow finds a way to raise the bar again. I also think the Odyssey is going to change Hollywood. Studios are constantly asking if audiences still want original filmmaking. I think it's a mix of things. I think Obsession and Backroom certainly helped, and now the Odyssey on very different scales of budget to see success, but very commercial without IP. Um, and the question becomes, will you sit through 3 hour movies? And the answer has been yes, if it done right. Do practical effects still matter? Is in theatrical experiences when you have this world of streaming still worth investing in? Nolan keeps answering those questions with the same response of yes. If you make something extraordinary, people will come. That's why theaters still matter. It's why directors still matter. And it's why I think when we look back 20 or 30 years from now, Nolan won't just be remembered as the defining director of his generation. He'll be remembered as one of the greatest filmmakers in the history of cinema. And after the Odyssey, I don't even think that's much of a debate anymore.
I agree. I mean, I haven't seen the movie, but I want to see it. And the reviews and the critical acclaim already says that this is a return to form. If Oppenheimer wasn't, this is Nolan back on top of the world. And I think you're right, Joe. I think that what we're seeing now is maybe a bit of a renaissance in movie making, but also the fact is these movies are out there, they're always there. There's always great art being done. And I think that even with the age of AI and everything, what you're going to come down to is the human ability to create original things, and to be able to be unique in its expression. It's in the hands or it's in the heart. Whatever it is that makes us unique, we can create really awesome things that computers just simply can't. And I don't think that there's an end to what we think of as the heyday of films. I think it's always the cyclical thing. A new auteur is going to come around. Look at what A24 is doing. Look at Nolan and all of these things. Look at these YouTubers that are making movies and somehow are incredible at it. The future's bright.
And it's not a zero-sum game. You can have your John Cena and Mark Wahlberg straight to streaming action comedy movies over here. That's there. There's an audience for that. But it's not mutually exclusive to the epics that you go run to the theater and treat it like an event. You're like, we're going out tonight to watch a movie. We're not putting something on with takeout.
Well, I think you're right. This is event movie making. If there's event TV, this is an event movie. You have to go see it. And Nolan films with these IMAX cameras. He expects you to go see it in the biggest format possible, and he rewards you for doing so if you actually go there. So,
Well, Mike, until the next one, I don't know how we could top a directorial one until we have Tarantino's 10th and final film as far as the acclaim and praise.
well, if you think that I was harsh on Nolan at the beginning, when we do our Tarantino one, man, it's gonna be it's
Oh,
gonna
I
be
can't wait
shots
for that
fired.
too.
So, all right, man. Well, that's what we put on, and like we said, everybody seems to have a different list for Nolan and whose movies are gonna fit or which movie is gonna fit where. That's our mountain, though. That's the way we carved it. The real question is what would you put onto yours? Until the next episode, he's Joe Mintz. I'm Mike Mintz, and this is the Mount Rushmore Show.